Thank you.
You bet. Well, here we go. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah.
Amen.
Amen.
So here we go. We'll do verse 7. That's where we're at right now. Shtei tefot chovrot yelo al shnei ktsotav. He should have two attached shoulder straps on its two edges, and v'chubar. So this is the attached, and Rashi's going to explain what that means. All right, and I think you have an idea of the shoulder straps, but I can get a picture for you again if I have to. Here we go. Hasinar milamata. So the apron part of it, of the ephod, the part that's just called the ephod in the Torah, referred to as the ephod, okay, is on the bottom. The cheshev ha'ephod hi hachagura, and the cheshev of the ephod, by now you should be quite familiar with this, right, is the belt, utzmuda lo milamala, and it's attached to it from above. But we know that that's sort of woven into the fabric of the ephod. It's attached. The cheshev isn't sort of just sewn to it. It's actually woven into this part of the ephod. Dugumat sinar hanashim, and he goes back to saying, this is the pattern of the women's riding apron. Umigabo shel kohen hayu mechubarot. The cheshev, and from the Kohen's back, attached to the cheshev, to the belt, shtei chatichot, two strips, two pieces, kemin shtei ritzuot, like two straps, rechavot, achat, wide straps, achat keneged, one corresponding kol katef katef, each shoulder of the high priest. V'zokfan al shtei ktefotav, and you stretch out these straps over his two shoulders, ad shenikpalot lefanav, until they fold over in front of him, keneged hachazeh, opposite his chest. V'aldei chiburam, and by means of their being attached l'tabaot hachoshen, they are then attached to those rings of the choshen, of the breastplate, ne'achazim milfanav. They are held on to his from the front. So that way they stay up, right, extended over his shoulders. Keneged libo, over his heart, corresponding to his heart. She'ein noflot, so that because they don't fall down. K'mor shemufarash be'inyan, as is explained in this subject. V'hayu zekufot v'holchot, and they would stretch up and continue keneged ktefav, corresponding to his shoulders. U'shtei avnei shoam kvuot bahen, and two onyx stones are attached to them. Achat b'chol achat. Each onyx stone on each shoulder strap. And I can show you that I can stop the share a second, and we can take a quick look at this, just so that you can see it once again. I believe I can get that. Let me see what I can do.
So,
Here
by
we
the
are.
way,
Yes.
while you're pulling that up, the question I have is, okay, so he's going into a lot of the detail. I mean, this is the technical detail of how you put this on.
Yes.
But so what? But there must be. I mean, he wouldn't be going in this detail, I'm assuming. I mean, as we've read in other areas, without having some meaning behind it. So what's the meaning behind the straps? Are we going to get to that? Is that
no?
coming?
He does talk about the meaning of the breastplate, but there are other places. So here's how it's doing. These are the straps that we're talking about here.
Right.
And let's see if I can put this back. Right, and you can see how they come over his shoulders, and they're the rings that then attach to the choshen. All right, but so I'm sure that there are places, the Malbim, for example, goes into a lovely exposition about clothing in general, and how clothing expresses, the way clothing, I believe, how clothing in a nonverbal way communicates and makes us conscious of things. And what's interesting is, here's one of the points that the Malbim makes. And it's interesting that it also is a play on words in English as well. And he talks about clothing being something that is on you constantly and then represents habitual behavior. And you know that in English, there's an old English word, habit, right? We have the modern meaning of the word habit, but there's also an older English meaning of the word habit, which means your clothing.
Ah.
And he has a very interesting excursus on the symbolism of the clothing and how it was to make us conscious of these various behaviors that we want to avoid at all times. Now, what's interesting, he also plays on the Hebrew, because the word beged, Beit Gimel Daled, also is related to a root bagad, and bagad means to cheat or to trick, and to show a lack of faith when somebody trusts you. So to cheat someone, they use the term bagad, and that's because your clothing, right, doesn't necessarily show who you are on the inside. And just as we can be that way as human beings, we can be one way externally and another way internally. And this is all part of trying to remind us not to behave in that particular kind of way, that we should be the same on the outside as we are on the inside, at least as best as we can. So we all have our dark sides, and how one tries to, deal with that is, of course, the question. So this all comes to work on these sorts of various elements. I'm going to, I can actually, let's see.
Oh, that was very helpful. Thank you.
Oops, I'm going to see it. There we go. This has a better view of the onyx stones and the rings that held up the breastplate. So there are, in fact, some wonderful descriptions and discussions of the symbolism. Rashi essentially isn't coming to do that. Rashi's just trying to help us understand the text and the meaning of the text. Onwards with this. El Shnei Ktzotav, to its two extremities, Shal Rochbo Shel Ephod, that is regarding the width of the Ephod. So Shelo Haya Rochbo Ella Keneged Gabo, because in other words, it's talking about the fact that it goes around to his back, because the wide part of the Ephod went around his back. Ella Keneged Gabo Shel Kohen, it's opposite the back of the Kohen. V'gavhu ad keneged ha'atzilim, v'govho, and the height of it is up until the elbows. Shekorin, and this is kud or something in French, and the Yiddish is Ellenbogen. I can let you figure out what that means, that you're all experts in Yiddish and can figure out what Ellenbogen means in Yiddish. Shene'emar, how do we know this? There's a verse in Ezekiel that says, Lo yechgaru beyeza, they should not, the ephod shouldn't be attached, because what happens is the final several chapters on Ezekiel deal with this vision that Ezekiel has of a temple. He talks about the dimensions, he talks about the priests and their garments and things like that. There are some contradictory statements in Ezekiel compared to what we read here in the Torah or elsewhere in the book of Kings, where Solomon is building his temple. I think that was a reason that Ezekiel was almost not included in the canon, but there were ways in which to, I believe, harmonize these various versions, and they decided that Ezekiel needed to be in the Tanakh as well. So it says in Ezekiel, Yo lo yichgaru beyeza. It shouldn't be tied where there is perspiration. Ein chogrim b'makom ze'ah. That's exactly, Rashi is translating that, or putting it into simpler Hebrew. You do not tie it in a place where there is perspiration. Lo lamala me'atzilehem, not above their elbows, velo lamata motnehem, and not below their loins, ela keneged atzilehem, but right opposite their elbows. That's where this would be tied. So the last word of that pasuk was v'chubar, and attached. So here's what he says: ha'ephod. That is, it should be attached to the ephod. Im otan shtei ketefot. Ha'ephod im otan shtei ketefot. The ephod with those two shoulder straps of the ephod. Ha'ephod yechaber it otam. He should attach them b'machat, with a needle. In other words, he should sew them onto the ephod, lemata, at the bottom, the cheshev, to the cheshev, to the belt, the lo ya'argem imo, and he shouldn't weave it alongside of it. In other words, he shouldn't weave it together with the cheshev, with that belt. Ela orgam levad, but what he does is he weaves the shoulder straps separately, v'achar kach mechabram, and after that, he then attaches the straps to the ephod. And again, I suspect there is symbolism involved in how this is actually fabricated, and why certain ones are actually woven, part of the weave, and why the shoulder straps aren't part of the weave. There's a symbolism involved in every bit of this element here. Here we go. Let's go to the next verse. The cheshev afudato, and this cheshev of his ephod, asher alav, which is upon him, kema'asehu. It looks exactly the same way. It's the designs, etc., are identical. In other words, and also remember how we were reading about the various threads that were then intertwined to make the thread from which the garment was woven. So it's all the same. It's made exactly the same. Zahav from gold, tchelet blue, the argaman, and purple, the tolat shani, and crimson, the shesh moshzar, and linen moshzar, twisted all together. So each thread is made up of these strands, all twisted together. And of course, yesterday we read in the Rashi how that was actually made. So the cheshev afudato, and the cheshev of his ephod, the chagur she'al yado, and the belt which is next to it, who me'apdo umitkanehu lakohen umekashto. He says so the way Rashi's understanding this is that this sentence is coming to tell us that he uses the cheshev to tie the ephod in place, and umitkanehu, that's to set it in its place, lakohen, for the priest, umekashto, and the kashet means actually to decorate, to make look beautiful, to adorn, and adorns him with that way. Asher alav, which is upon him, lamala bisvat hasinar, above, on the edge of the apron, he hachagura, that's where the belt is located. Kema'asehu, he says, as according to its fabrication, ka'arigat hasinar, just as the apron part is woven, ma'aseh choshev. We gave various interpretations as to what that meant, right? Whether it meant a skilled workman, or whether or not, I'm sorry that I don't recollect Golda's, maybe one of you remembers how Golda interpreted that.
Well, here it says master weaver.
Okay, yeah. So it means the work of a skilled craftsman. And it's from those 5 different types of fabrics, right? The blue, purple, crimson, linen, and gold yarns. Kach arigat hacheshev. So the weaving of the cheshev, of the belt, maaseh choshev, it is the work of a skilled craftsman. As I recollect, I liked Golda's the interpretation that she had there, because it was referring actually to how the fabric and how it was woven together. And it should be of these 5 species. Mimenu yehiyeh. So this doesn't say v'chubar, it says mimenu yehiyeh, imo, with it. Yeh arug, it should be woven. V'lo ya'argenu lavad v'yachbarenu. And it should not be woven separately, like the 2 shoulder straps, right? And then attached. It needed to be woven all together, that whole thing. Let's keep right here. V'lakachta et shtei avnei shoham, and you should take 2 onyx stones, ufitachta alehem, and you should engrave on them shmot bnei Israel, the names of the children of Israel. I am going to stop here. And the reason I'm going to stop here is I have a challah that I now have to remove and get ready to twist and to bake. So I'm going to stop the share, and I'm going to stop the recording, and wish you all a happy Purim. And this lesson was Le'ilui Nishmat, your father, David. Do you know his Hebrew name?
Oh, yeah. Gosh, yeah. Ben Yisrael. So yeah.
So what was his first name?
No. He's Yitzhak. He's it's Urban. So yeah, my dad doesn't have a middle name.
That's okay. So it was Yitzchak Ben, and his father's name was name
Israel. Yeah, Israel. Israel. Yeah, I'm named after him. So I'm just kind of reverse it.
So was his name Yisrael?
Yeah.
Okay.